Chapter 1. The Public Rejection. The bond of a fated mate is supposed to feel like a consuming fire, but tonight, standing under the light of the blood moon, all I felt was the suffocating ice of betrayal. I, Jackson Locke, future alpha of the Bloodhound Pack, hereby reject you, Elena Vance, as my fated mate and future Luna. The words echoed across the sacred clearing, sharp and lethal as a silver blade. A collective gasp rippled through the hundreds of pack members gathered around the ceremonial stone. The whispers started instantly, hissing like snakes in the dark. I stood frozen in the center of the ring, the heavy, metallic scent of the ceremonial fires burning my throat. Just minutes ago, when Jackson's eyes had turned a fierce midnight black, and his gaze locked onto mine, my soul had sung. The universe had chosen him for me, the powerful golden boy alpha heir. For a fraction of a second, I had seen a flash of possessive hunger in his eyes, but then, the hunger was replaced by something else. Calculation. Disgust. Jackson, I whispered, my voice trembling as I took a step toward him. The bond inside me bled. A raw, agonizing pull that begged him to hold me. What are you doing? We're mates. The moon chose us. Jackson didn't step forward. He looked down his nose at me, his handsome face hardening into a mask of pure arrogance. At his side, his father, the current alpha, gave a slow, approving nod. The moon made a mistake, Jackson said, his voice amplified by his alpha aura, heavy enough to drop a weaker wolf to their knees. A future alpha needs a powerful Luna, a woman from a high-standing bloodline who can birth strong heirs. You, Elena, are the daughter of a disgraced warrior. You are weak, your lineage is worthless. I will not compromise the future of my pack for a cosmic fluke. The cruelty of his words cut deeper than any physical blow. I looked around the circle of faces. People I had known my entire life, people I had grown up with, were turning their heads away. Some looked at me with pity. Others, like Jackson's elite friends, were smirked openly. Right next to Jackson stood Tinsley, the daughter of the pack's wealthiest beater. She wore a triumphant smile, stepping closer to Jackson's side. This was planned. He had traded destiny for politics. Look at me, Elena, Jackson commanded, his voice cold. Accept the rejection. Let us end this so the pack can move forward. The physical pain of the rejection was already setting in. It felt like a physical tearing inside my chest, like my wolf was being ripped in half. Tears blurred my vision, hot and stinging, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me beg. I swallowed the lump of glass in my throat. I straightened my spine, forcing myself to look directly into the eyes of the boy I had dreamed about. The boy who had just shattered my life for a title. I, Elena Vance. I choked out, every word costing me a piece of my soul. Accept your rejection, Jackson Locke. May the moon have mercy on your pack, because I won't. A sharp, agonizing shockwave of energy blasted through the clearing as the fated bonds snapped. I gasped, stumbling backward as a hollow, freezing emptiness filled my chest. Jackson winced slightly. The rejection hurt him too, but he quickly masked it, turning his back on me to raise Tinsley's hand to the cheering crowd. The pack had made their choice. I was a pariah, an outcast. Unable to breathe, unable to look at their mocking faces for another second, I turned and ran. I crashed through the crowd, ignoring the whispers and the laughter that followed me. I ran past the ceremonial stones, past the borders of the village, and straight into the dark, tangled depths of the woods. The branches whipped against my face, cutting my skin, but I didn't care. The pain in my body was nothing compared to the howling void in my heart. I didn't stop running until the sounds of the pack faded entirely, replaced by the ominous heavy silence of the deep forest. Only when I paused to gasp for air did I realize how far I had gone. Ahead of me stood a row of massive, ancient black oaks, their branches twisting like claws against the bloody sky. Hanging from the trees were old, rusted iron markers, the Blackwood border. I had run straight to the edge of our territory. Beyond these trees lay the Forbidden Zone, the territory of the Nightshade pack, ruled by Killian the Blood Alpha, a man rumored to tear the throats out of trespassers without warning. A low, guttural growl vibrated through the trees behind me. I spun around, my breath catching. Out of the shadows of my old pack's territory, 3 large, mangy wolves emerged. They weren't guards sent to fetch me. They were low-life rogues that hung around the edges of our pack, looking for easy prey. And now, they saw a rejected, weakened female wolf all alone in the dark. They bared their fangs, snapping at the air as they slowly circled me, cutting off my path back home. I was trapped. Behind me was the territory of a monster. In front of me were wolves, who wanted to tear me apart. Chapter 2: The Monster in the Woods. The three rogues advanced, their paws thudding heavily against the damp earth. Saliva dripped from their bared fangs, catching the faint, eerie glow of the blood moon filtering through the thick canopy. I backed up until my shoulder blades hit the rough bark of a massive black oak. The rusted iron border marker rattled against the trunk above my head. The Nightshade border. I couldn't go back, and I couldn't go forward. My inner wolf whined, curled into a tight, miserable ball deep inside my consciousness. The rejection had stripped her of her strength. She didn't want to fight. She wanted to crawl into a dark cave and bleed out from the broken bond. "Get back," I warned, my voice shaking as I tried to summon a flicker of dominance. But without an alpha, without a pack, my words lacked any real weight. The largest rogue, a massive scarred grey beast, snapped his jaws in response. He didn't see a wolf. He saw an easy meal, a piece of abandoned pack meat. He lunged. I threw my arms up to shield my face, bracing for the agony of tearing teeth. I squeezed my eyes shut, a silent, bitter thought flashing through my mind. Let Jackson carry the guilt of my death on his hands forever. But the pain never came. Instead, a sound tore through the forest that froze the very blood in my veins. It wasn't a normal wolf's growl. It was a deep, catastrophic rumble that vibrated through the earth, shaking the leaves off the branches and rattling my teeth. It carried a suffocating, terrifying weight, an alpha aura so dense and suffocating that the air instantly turned to liquid lead. Before I could even open my eyes, a blur of midnight black fur exploded from the shadows of the forbidden territory. It was a wolf, but it was easily twice the size of the grey rogue. His fur was as dark as the abyss, his eyes glowing a predatory molten gold. The black wolf hit the scarred rogue mid-air. The impact sounded like a car crash. The rogue didn't even have time to yelp before the black wolf's jaws clamped around his throat with a sickening crunch. The giant beast ripped his head back, tossing the lifeless body of the rogue into the underbrush like a rag doll. The remaining two rogues whimpered, their ears flattening against their skulls as they immediately dropped to their bellies, urinating on themselves in absolute terror. The giant black wolf didn't show mercy. He moved like smoke and lightning. A swipe of his massive, clawed paw sent one rogue crashing into a boulder, cracking its ribs, while his jaws snapped the spine of the last one before it could even turn to run. In less than 10 seconds, the threat was gone. The clearing smelled heavily of copper, pine and death. I pressed myself harder against the tree, my heart hammering against my ribs so violently I thought it would burst. The massive black wolf slowly turned around, his golden eyes locked onto me, tracking the erratic pulse in my throat. Killian. It had to be him. The stories whispered around the campfires of my old pack didn't do him justice. They called him a demon, a mindless butcher. But looking at him now, he didn't look mindless. He looked like an apex predator who ruled the dark. He took a slow, deliberate step toward me. "Please," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop it. My knees gave out, and I slid down the trunk of the tree, collapsing into the dirt. I was completely defenseless, trembling violently in the cold air. The giant wolf stopped a mere 3 feet away. The heat radiating off his massive body washed over me, chasing away the freezing chill of the rejection bond for a brief second. He lowered his massive head, his wet black nose twitching as he took a deep inhaling breath. He was smelling me. He was catching the scent of my fresh heartbreak, the blood from my scratches, and the lingering sour scent of Jackson's rejection. Suddenly, a violent shudder ran through the giant wolf's frame. His molten gold eyes widened, flashing brighter. A low, agonizing sound rumbled in his chest, not a growl of anger, but a sound of fierce, possessive recognition. Before my eyes, the wolf began to shift. The bones cracked and reshaped, the black fur receding into smooth, tanned skin. Within seconds, a man stood before me in the dim moonlight. He was breathtakingly handsome, but carrying a sharp, dangerous edge. He had a jawline carved from granite, dark hair that fell messily across his forehead, and a broad, muscular chest covered in battle scars. But it was his eyes that trapped me. They remained that same striking, hypnotic gold. Killian knelt down in front of me, sinking into the dirt without a care for the blood or the mud. He reached out a large, calloused hand, his fingers hovering just an inch from my cheek, as if he were afraid I would break if he touched me. "Who did this to you?" he asked. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone that seemed to echo directly in my chest. There was a dangerous undercurrent of absolute fury in his tone, but his eyes were focused on me with a strange, fierce intensity. I choked, unable to form words. Killian's eyes flicked to my neck, where the invisible phantom mark of my fated bond was bleeding out, snapping completely. He understood instantly. A dark, terrifying smile tugged at the corner of his lips, though his eyes remained fiercely protective. He closed the distance, his warm fingers finally brushing against my jawline. The moment his skin touched mine, a jolt of pure, electric lightning surged through my body. It didn't feel like the fading, painful bond of my ex-mate. It felt like something entirely different, something heavier, darker, and infinitely more powerful. Killian leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear as his grip tightened gently on my jaw, forcing me to look up into his golden gaze. "They threw away a queen," Killian murmured, his growl vibrating against my skin. "Their loss, because you are coming with me, little wolf, and I am never letting you go." Chapter 3. In the enemy's lair. The world blurred into a haze of exhaustion and heat. I remembered the sensation of being lifted into a pair of impossibly strong arms, the scent of cedar and dark rain wrapping around me like a blanket, and then, darkness. When my eyes finally fluttered open, the first thing I realized was that I wasn't dead. The second was that I was lying on the softest mattress I had ever felt in my life. I bolted upright, a gasp catching in my throat. The sheets beneath me were made of heavy, expensive black silk. I looked down at myself. The torn, muddy clothes from the ceremony were gone, replaced by an oversized, incredibly soft, dark green sweater that smelled faintly of spice and wood smoke. Panic seized me. I scrambled out of the bed, my bare feet hitting a plush, dark rug. The room was massive, styled like a modern fortress. Exposed stone walls, heavy timber beams, and a floor-to-ceiling glass window that looked out over a breathtaking view of jagged mountains and a sprawling, illuminated valley below. This wasn't a cave or a dirty camp. This was the heart of the Nightshade Pack's territory. "You're awake." The deep, gravelly voice cut through the silence. I whipped my head around, my heart leaping into my throat. Killian was sitting in a large leather armchair in the shadows near a roaring fireplace. He had a glass of amber liquid in his hand, and he was watching me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a black shirt, but his sheer size and the predatory stillness of his posture screamed alpha. I backed away until my calves hit the edge of the bed, looking around frantically for a weapon or an exit. Why am I here? What do you want with me?" Killian slowly set his glass down on a side table. He stood up, and the simple movement made me tense. He was easily 6'4", broad-shouldered, and radiating power. But as he stepped into the firelight, I noticed his golden eyes were completely calm. "You were dying of a broken bond in the middle of a freezing forest," Killian said, taking a slow step toward me, stopping just far enough away to give me space. "If I had left you there, the frost or the rogues would have finished you off. I brought you to my home. You're safe here." "Safe?" I let out a breathless, bitter laugh, the memory of my old pack's warnings flashing in my mind. "You're the Blood Alpha. My pack says you execute anyone who crosses your borders. They say you're a monster." One of Killian's dark eyebrows arched, a faint, amused smirk tugging at his lips. "Your pack says a lot of things. They also told you that destiny was sacred, right before their golden boy heir threw you to the wolves." The reminder hit me like a physical punch. The heavy, hollow ache in my chest flared up again. Jackson's cruel face, Tinsley's smirk, the mocking laughter of the people I trusted, it all rushed back, making my vision swim. I slumped slightly, the anger draining out of me, leaving only a profound, crushing exhaustion. Killian noticed the shift instantly. The amusement vanished from his face, replaced by a dark, simmering fury that I realized wasn't directed at me. He closed the distance between us in 2 silent strides. Before I could pull away, he reached out and gently took my hands. His skin was burning hot, and the moment our fingers intertwined, that same electric spark from the forest shot up my arms. It didn't just tingle, it actively soothed the raw, bleeding ache in my soul. My wolf, who had been completely catatonic, raised her head and let out a soft, confused purr. "How are you doing that?" I whispered, staring at our joined hands. "The rejection. It's supposed to feel like dying. Why does touching you make it stop?" Killian looked down at me, his golden eyes burning with a fierce, possessive light. "Because the universe might have given you a fated mate, Elena," But the universe can be stupid. Jackson Locke is a fool who chose power over a goddess. But a soul as strong as yours doesn't just wither away. My pack doesn't believe in blind fate. We believe in choice. He stepped closer, his shadow completely enveloping me. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a seductive velvety whisper. I choose you. I saw your fire in the woods, even when you were broken. I want that fire in my pack, I want it by my side. My breath hitched. You don't even know me. I know everything I need to know, Killian murmured, his thumb brushing over the back of my hand. I know you want to make them regret what they did. I know you want to see the look on Jackson's face when he realizes he threw away the most powerful thing that ever belonged to him. He let go of my hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small silver dagger intricately carved with wolf runes. He flipped it, catching the handle, and offered it to me. So here is my proposition, Elena Vance. Stay here, let my warriors train you, let me show you what real pack strength looks like. Help me dismantle the Bloodhound pack from the inside out, using everything you know about them. I stared at the gleaming silver blade, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. He was offering me asylum, he was offering me power, he was offering me revenge. And if I say no, I asked, looking up into his golden eyes. If I want to leave? Killian tilted his head, a dangerous, thrilling smile spreading across his face. Then I will escort you safely to the border myself, but we both know you have nothing left over there. Stay here, Elena, become a monster with me. I looked at the dagger, then looked out the window at the vast, wild mountain territory of the Nightshade pack. For the first time since the moon ceremony, the crushing weight of being a rejected outcast felt lighter. It was replaced by a cold, sharp spark of ambition. I reached out and took the dagger from his hand. Chapter 4. Sparks and Training. The training grounds of the Nightshade pack were nothing like the manicured fields of my old home. Located in a deep stone ravine behind the fortress, the air here smelled of crushed pine needles, sweat, and ozone. There were no rules here, only survival. Again, a harsh voice barked. I wiped a mixture of sweat and dirt from my forehead, pushing my tangled hair out of my eyes. I was standing in the center of a dirt ring, facing off against Marcus, one of Killian's top beta warriors. He was a mountain of a man, his arms covered in tribal tattoos, and he wasn't holding back just because I was a guest. Or a female. I lunged forward, throwing a hard left hook, but Marcus ducked easily. He caught me by the waist and flipped me over his shoulder. I hit the hard-packed dirt with a thud that knocked the wind right out of my lungs. I lay there for a second, staring up at the gray sky, my ribs aching. The physical toll of the last 3 weeks was catching up to me. Every muscle burned, and my inner wolf was still fragile, bruised from Jackson's rejection. You're hesitating, Elena, Marcus said, offering me a hand up. You're fighting like a bloodhound wolf. They rely on numbers and brute force. Here, we fight with instinct. If you don't use your wolf's senses, you're just a human with a temper. I'm trying, I wheezed, ignoring his hand and pushing myself up onto my knees. My wolf, she's quiet. Ever since the bond snapped, it's like she's locked behind a wall. Then break the wall down. The deep, rumbling voice sent a sudden jolt of electricity straight down my spine. I looked up. Killian was walking down the stone steps into the ravine. He had stripped down to a tight black tank top that showed off the lethal contours of his shoulders, and the dark, intricate tattoos winding down his arms. Every warrior in the vicinity immediately stopped what they were doing, bowing their heads in silent respect. Killian waved a hand, dismissing Marcus. The beta nodded and stepped out of the ring, leaving me alone with the blood alpha. Killian walked into the dirt circle, his golden eyes locked onto me like a predator tracking prey. You've been pushing yourself hard, Elena. But Marcus is right. You're fighting your own nature. It's easy for you to say, I snapped, my frustration finally boiling over. I wiped the dirt off my trousers, glaring at him. You didn't have your soul ripped in half 3 weeks ago. I can barely feel her. How am I supposed to fight when I feel completely empty inside? Killian didn't answer right away. He stopped just 2 feet away from me. The sheer waves of heat radiating from his body made my skin tingle, and that familiar, addictive comfort began to soothe the ache in my chest. You aren't empty, Killian murmured, his voice dropping to a low, commanding register. You're just afraid. You're afraid that if you let your wolf out, she'll remind you of the pain. But your wolf isn't the rejection, Elena. She is your survival. Before I could process his words, Killian moved. He didn't strike me, but he closed the distance instantly, grabbing my wrists and pinning them against his chest. I gasped, my front pressed flush against his hard, muscular torso. The physical proximity was overwhelming. I could feel the rapid, powerful thudding of his heart, and the scent of him. Spiced wood smoke and raw, masculine dominance flooded my senses. "Let me go," I breathed, trying to pull my wrists from his iron grip. "Make me," Killian growled, his golden eyes darkening with a sudden, intense heat. "Fight me, Elena. Stop using your human mind, and use your instinct. Tap into the anger. Think about the clearing. Think about Jackson looking down his nose at you, telling you that you were worthless." A flash of raw, blinding fury erupted in my chest at the mention of Jackson's name. The memory of the humiliation, the laughter, and the betrayal flared like gasoline on an open flame. Deep inside my consciousness, the wall cracked. My inner wolf raised her head, her eyes flashing a dangerous, icy blue. She let out a fierce, defensive snarl that echoed in my own throat. With a surge of sudden, supernatural strength I didn't know I possessed, I ripped my wrists out of Killian's grip. I spun, using his own momentum against him, and drove my elbow hard into his ribs. The blow landed with a heavy smack. Killian stumbled back a step, a breathless grunt escaping his lips. I stood in the center of the ring, my chest heaving, my vision sharper, and my claws involuntarily extending from my fingertips. The empty void in my chest was gone, replaced by a roaring, intoxicating tide of power. Killian stood a few feet away, rubbing his ribs. But he wasn't angry. A slow, wicked, and utterly captivated smile spread across his handsome face. His golden eyes burned with a scorching, possessive pride. "There she is," Killian purred, his voice sending a violent shiver of desire straight through me. He took a slow step back toward me, his gaze dropping to my lips before locking back onto my eyes. "There is my warrior queen." I stared at him, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm that had absolutely nothing to do with anger, and everything to do with the man standing in front of me. Chapter 5. The Choice. The raw thrill of unlocking my wolf didn't fade, even as the adrenaline drained from my body. Over the next week, the heavy wall in my chest remained broken, allowing my wolf's senses to bleed completely into my everyday life. I could hear the rustle of mice in the brush a mile away. I could track the scent of the pack warriors across the fortress. But most of all, I was painfully aware of Killian. Every time he entered a room, my wolf stretched, purring in recognition of his presence. The fading agony of Jackson's rejection was being systematically replaced by a new, terrifyingly intense connection to the blood alpha. It wasn't a fated bond forced upon me by the cosmos, it was an active choice. A daily choosing of the man who had pulled me from the dirt. I was sitting in the fortress library, mapping out the weak points of the Bloodhound Pack's eastern border defense for Marcus, when the heavy oak doors banged open. Killian walked in. The calm, composed alpha I had grown used to was gone. His jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle twitched, and his golden eyes were flashing with an ominous predatory light. "Elena," he said, his voice a low, vibrating growl that immediately made my wolf stand at attention. "Leave us, Marcus." The beta didn't hesitate. He gathered the maps with a quick nod and slipped out of the room, shutting the heavy doors behind him. I stood up from the wooden table, my heart quickening. "Killian? What's wrong? Has something happened?" Killian walked over to me, stopping so close I could feel the rigid tension vibrating off his large frame. "A border patrol from the Bloodhound Pack just crossed the Blackwood line. They didn't sneak across, they marched right up to the iron markers." My breath hitched. "Jackson. He's leading them," Killian muttered, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "He's demanding an audience with me. He claims that the Nightshade Pack has stolen property belonging to his alpha lineage. He wants you back, Elena." A cold, heavy dread settled in my stomach, quickly followed by a sickening wave of fury. Property. Even after publicly humiliating me and tearing my soul apart, Jackson still viewed me as something he owned. A piece of stray livestock to be fetched and locked in a cage. "What are you going to do?" I whispered, looking up into his golden gaze. "Are you going to hand me over?" Killian's expression hardened into something terrifyingly fierce. He reached out, his large hands cupping my face, forcing me to feel the burning heat of his palms. "Look at me, little wolf," he commanded, his baritone voice echoing with absolute authority. "I don't hand over what is mine. I would burn their entire territory to ash before I let them lay a single finger on you. But this is your life, and it has to be your choice." He leaned down, his forehead resting gently against mine. The intimacy of the gesture made my breath catch. "If you want to go back, if you want to face him and demand your place in that pack, I will stand behind you with my entire army," Killian whispered against my skin. "But if you stay, you swear your allegiance to the Nightshade pack, you become one of us, completely, permanently." I closed my eyes, breathing in his scent of cedar and dark rain. The choice wasn't hard. It hadn't been hard for a long time. The Bloodhound pack was my past, a past filled with weakness, submission, and betrayal. The Nightshade pack was my future. Killian was my future. I opened my eyes, looking directly into his molten gold gaze. "I'm not a Bloodhound anymore, Killian. I choose you. I choose Nightshade." A dark, beautiful smile spread across Killian's face. The relief in his eyes was instantly swallowed by a fierce, triumphant hunger. He didn't say a word. Instead, he leaned down and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was explosive. It wasn't gentle. It was a possessive, consuming claim that made my knees go weak. My hands flew to his chest, gripping the fabric of his shirt as he pulled me flush against his massive body. The last lingering remnants of Jackson's rejection bond shriveled up and died, completely obliterated by the scorching heat of Killian's touch. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathless. His eyes were glowing fiercely. "Good," Killian growled softly, wiping his thumb across my lower lip. "Then let's go tell your ex-mate that you belong to the shadows now." Chapter 6: The Confrontation. The wind howling through the Blackwood forest carried the scent of rain, pine, and imminent violence. I marched at Killian's side, flanked by a dozen of the Nightshade pack's most lethal elite warriors. I wasn't hiding behind them. I wore a dark leather combat jacket, the silver dagger Killian had given me, strapped securely to my thigh. My posture was straight, my shoulders back. The trembling, broken girl who had fled this forest a month ago was dead. As we approached the border, the shadows parted to reveal the Bloodhound patrol. There were 8 of them, standing just across the rusted iron markers, and right at the front, looking as arrogant and pristine as ever, was Jackson. He wore his Alpha Air leather jacket, his arms crossed over his chest. Beside him was his father's lead enforcer, a brutal wolf named Silas. When the sound of our footsteps echoed through the clearing, Jackson looked up, his eyes instantly locked onto Killian, his jaw tightening as he prepared to demand my return. But then, his gaze flicked over Killian's shoulder, and he froze. I stepped into the dim light of the clearing, standing directly beside the Blood Alpha. Jackson's mouth parted slightly, his crossed arms dropping to his sides. He blinked, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. I looked completely different. The hollow, defeated look in my eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp confidence. My skin was radiant, and my scent, which had been weak and broken when I left, was now thick with the unmistakable, powerful aura of the Nightshade pack. "Elena," Jackson breathed, taking an involuntary step forward toward the borderline. You're alive." "Back off, Locke," Killian's voice boomed. The deep, catastrophic rumble of his voice vibrated through the clearing, making the leaves shake on the branches. He stepped slightly in front of me, his massive frame blocking half of Jackson's view. "You are standing at the edge of my territory. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't slaughter your patrol where they stand for trespassing." Silas, the older Bloodhound enforcer, tensed, his hand moving toward his weapon. But Jackson kept his eyes on me, completely ignoring the deadly threat of the Blood Alpha. A sudden, ugly flash of possessive anger washed over Jackson's handsome face. "Elena, what is the meaning of this? Why are you dressed like that, and why are you standing with him?" "I don't owe you any explanations, Jackson," I said. My voice was calm, smooth, and entirely devoid of the fear he was used to hearing. "You made your position very clear under the Blood Moon. I am nothing to you. You are a member of the Bloodhound pack," Jackson snapped, his voice rising, his alpha aura flaring in an attempt to dominate me. "You carry our pack secrets. You belong in our territory. I don't care about the fated bond. You are a citizen of my father's lands, and I am ordering you to step across the border right now. In the past, that tone would have made me flinch. It would have made my wolf cower. But tonight, I felt absolutely nothing. The invisible pressure of his alpha aura washed over me like a harmless breeze, completely neutralized by the heavy, protective aura Killian was radiating around me. She doesn't belong to you, Killian growled, his golden eyes flashing with a terrifying lethal light. He bared his fangs, a low sound vibrating in his throat that made the bloodhound warriors behind Jackson take a defensive step back. She has sworn her allegiance to the Nightshade pack. She is one of us now. Touch her, and you start a war you cannot win. Jackson laughed, a bitter, desperate sound. He looked at me, his eyes wide. Are you insane, Elena? You're siding with a monster? A savage who slaughters our people. Come home. My father will find a place for you in the lower ranks. You'll be safe. The lower ranks, a servant. A ghost living in the shadows of his new life with Tinsley. I took a step forward, putting my hand gently on Killian's forearm. The electric spark of comfort shot through me, anchoring me. I looked Jackson dead in the eye. I am home, Jackson, I said, my voice echoing with a fierce, undeniable finality. The moon didn't make a mistake when she chose me. You made a mistake when you rejected me. And you are going to have to live with that mistake for the rest of your short life. Jackson's face contorted into a mask of pure, unbridled rage. He bared his teeth, his fingers curling into claws as he glared at Killian, then back to me. This isn't over, Elena. You're a traitor, and my pack takes care of traitors. Step across that line and try it, Killian challenged, his voice dangerously soft. Please, give me a reason. Jackson held Killian's deadly gaze for 3 agonizing seconds. The tension in the clearing was so thick, a single spark would have set it ablaze. But Jackson knew the math. He was outnumbered, outmatched, and standing in front of the most feared alpha in the region. With a frustrated snarl, Jackson whipped around. We're leaving, he barked at his men, but prepare the warriors, we are going to take back what's ours. The Bloodhound patrol vanished into the dark woods, their retreating footsteps heavy with anger. Killian slowly relaxed his posture, turning his head to look down at me. The terrifying, murderous glare in his eyes melted away, replaced by that deep, burning pride. He reached out, his warm hand gripping the back of my neck. You did perfectly, little wolf, he murmured, but he's a coward. He won't fight fair. He's going to plan something in the dark. I looked out into the black trees where my past had just retreated. Let him try. I'm ready. Chapter 7. The Burning Truth. The adrenaline from the border confrontation carried us all the way back to the fortress, but the moment the heavy iron-reinforced doors slammed shut behind us, a heavy, suffocating silence descended. Killian immediately ordered the pack guards to double the perimeter patrols and place scouts along every hidden ravine. Jackson's threat wasn't empty words. His pride had been completely destroyed in front of his own elite warriors. A humiliated alpha heir was a desperate, dangerous creature. Once the orders were given, Killian turned and walked up the stone stairs toward his private quarters without a word. His massive shoulders were rigid, his hands still clenched into tight fists. I followed him. My inner wolf was pacing frantically, mirroring the dark, turbulent storm radiating off the Blood Alpha. I pushed into his room just as he threw his heavy leather jacket onto a chair. He was pacing in front of the roaring fireplace, his golden eyes flashing erratically in the dim light. Killian, I said softly, closing the heavy oak door behind me. He looked at you like he still owned you. Killian growled, his voice a low, terrifying vibration that seemed to rattle the window panes. He stopped pacing, turning his predatory gaze onto me. He spoke to you like you were a piece of stray cattle he could just whistle back into his pen. I should have torn his throat out right there on the border markers. But you didn't, I said, taking a slow step toward him. Because you knew it would put your pack at risk. You acted like a true alpha. I don't care about the risk, Elena, Killian roared, taking a violent step toward me. The sudden flare of his alpha aura was massive, hot, and heavy, but it didn't scare me. It made my own wolf surge forward in response. When he told you to come home, when he told you he would find a place for you in the lower ranks, a part of me went completely savage. The thought of anyone putting a cage around your fire, it drives me insane. He stopped just inches from me, his chest heaving as he stared down at me. The raw, unfiltered possessiveness in his eyes was blinding. I have spent my whole life fighting, Elena, he whispered, his voice suddenly dropping into a raw, vulnerable cadence that broke my heart. I built this pack from nothing but outcasts, rogues and survivors. I've never needed anyone. I've never wanted anyone. But the moment I found you bleeding out on that border, everything changed. It isn't just about destroying the bloodhounds anymore. It's about keeping you safe. It's about keeping you here, with me. The honesty of his words struck me deeper than any fated bond ever could have. Jackson had valued me for what I could provide for his lineage. My worth was a transaction. But Killian looked at my scars, looked at my fire, and valued me. The last lingering shred of doubt inside my soul dissolved. "I'm not going anywhere, Killian," I said, my voice fiercely steady. I reached up, placing my bare palms against his burning, muscular chest. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm under my hands. Jackson didn't throw away a queen. He threw away a weapon. And I am choosing to stand by your side. Not out of obligation, and not because a cosmic bond forced us together. Because I want to. Killian's eyes widened slightly, the molten gold burning with a sudden, scorching intensity. A low, breathless growl escaped his lips. He didn't hesitate this time. His large hands locked onto my waist, lifting me effortlessly as he drove his lips against mine. If our first kiss was a claim, this one was an absolute surrender to the fire between us. It was fierce, passionate, and hungry, filled with the terrifying realization of how much we both stood to lose. I wrapped my arms tightly around his neck, pulling him closer, letting his heat drown out the rest of the world. For the first time in my life, I felt completely cherished, completely powerful. We finally broke apart, both of us panting, our foreheads resting against each other as the fire crackled beside us. Killian's grip on my waist was iron-tight, as if he were physically anchoring me to his world. "Then we fight together," he murmured against my lips. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing howl echoed from the northern valley, cutting through the heavy silence of the night. It was followed by another, and then the frantic, synchronized tolling of the fortress alarm bells. Killian went instantly rigid. His eyes flashed back to a deadly, luminous gold, as he pulled back, looking toward the window. The scouts had returned. The war wasn't coming tomorrow. It was already at our gates. Chapter 8. The Battle of Blackwood. The world exploded into a symphony of snarls, crashing steel, and the heavy thud of paws hitting the frozen earth. The Bloodhound Pack hadn't just sent a tactical patrol. Jackson had convinced his father to send a massive raiding party. They had slipped through the northern ravines under the cover of the midnight mist, aiming to catch us unprepared. But they had drastically underestimated the vigilance of the Nightshade Pack. The courtyard of the fortress was a chaotic battlefield. Silver weapons gleamed in the firelight as Nightshade warriors engaged the invading wolves. I didn't stay locked in the high tower like Jackson would have wanted. I stood in the thick of the fray, the silver dagger Killian had given me gripped tightly in my hand. Two massive bloodhound warriors lunged at me from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with the intent to capture or kill the traitor. In the past, I would have frozen. Tonight, my wolf roared to life inside my veins. I ducked beneath the first wolf's clumsy swipe, using the agility I had built during those agonizing weeks in the training ring. I drove the hilt of my dagger hard into his jaw, shattering it, before spinning to slash the thigh of the second warrior. He howled, collapsing into the dirt. "Elena! Behind you!" Marcus's voice shouted through the din. I didn't look. I trusted my wolf's instincts. I dropped flat to the ground as a massive grey wolf leapt over me, missing my throat by inches. Before he could recover his footing, a blur of midnight black fur hit him mid-air. It was Killian. In his massive wolf form, the Blood Alpha was a force of pure destruction. He ripped the grey wolf away, tossing him aside like paper, before turning his molten gold eyes onto me. He gave a sharp, approving nod, his chest heaving as he stood guard over my flank. We are winning, I realized, looking around the courtyard. The Nightshade warriors were smaller in number, but they fought like demons possessed, protecting the home they had built from nothing. The Bloodhound invaders were already beginning to break formation, panicking as their surprise attack turned into a slaughter. "Retreat! Fall back to the tree line!" a frantic voice yelled through the chaos. It was Jackson. He was standing near the broken outer gates, his face smeared with soot and blood. He looked around the courtyard, his eyes wide with horror, as he watched his father's elite warriors being systematically taken down. He had promised his pack a swift, glorious victory against a weakened female and a handful of rogues. Instead, he had led them into a meat grinder. Jackson's gaze scanned the battlefield, searching for a way out, until his eyes locked onto me. The utter humiliation on his face turned into a toxic, desperate madness. He knew his reputation as the future alpha was completely ruined if he retreated like a coward without accomplishing anything. With a feral, guttural roar, Jackson didn't run toward the forest. He ran toward me. As he lunged across the blood-stained snow, his bones cracked violently. His body expanded, his clothes tearing away as he shifted mid-stride into his massive, golden fur, werewolf form. He bared his fangs, his eyes flashing a dark, manic alpha red, as he leapt through the air, aiming all his weight directly at my chest. Killian snarled, sprinting forward to intercept him, but a pair of lingering bloodhound enforcers threw themselves in front of the blood alpha, sacrificing their bodies to block him for a crucial 3 seconds. I was completely on my own. The golden wolf was descending upon me, his jaws open, ready to tear me apart to save his own twisted pride. I didn't back up. I planted my bare feet into the dirt, raised my silver dagger, and let out a snarl that shook the air. Chapter 9. The Alpha's Regret and Triumph. Jackson's massive golden wolf form came crashing down like a failing star. But I wasn't the weak, submissive girl he remembered. As his jaws snapped inches from my face, I dropped low to the ground, letting my wolf's reflexes take over completely. I slid beneath his heavy chest, using his own forward momentum against him, and drove my silver dagger deep into the soft flesh of his shoulder. Jackson let out a horrific, high-pitched yelp as the silver burned through his veins. He crashed heavily into the dirt, rolling several feet before scrambling back onto his paws, limping heavily. The golden fur on his shoulder was stained deep crimson. He shifted back into his human form, clutching his bleeding arm, his face pale and contorted in agony. He stared at me, his breathing ragged, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. "Elena," he wheezed, his voice trembling as he looked at the blood on his hands. You actually tried to kill me. We're fated, Elena. You can't do this." "You killed our bond, Jackson," I said, my voice ice cold as I stepped toward him, the silver dagger gleaming in the firelight. "The moment you rejected me for a title, you became nothing but a stranger to me. And right now, you're an enemy trespassing on my land." A heavy, terrifying shadow fell over the clearing. Killian walked up beside me, having completely dispatched the remaining enforcers. He was back in his human form, radiating a suffocating, lethal alpha aura that forced Jackson straight down onto his knees. Jackson looked up at Killian, then at me. The toxic arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic regret. He saw how powerful I had become. He saw the way the feared blood alpha looked at me, not as property, but as an equal, a queen. "Elena, please," Jackson begged, tears of pain and regret finally spilling down his face. "I made a mistake. The political alliance. Tinsley. It was all a mistake. Come back with me. We can fix the bond. I'll make you my Luna. I'll give you everything." I looked down at the boy I had once dreamed of spending my life with. I felt no anger. I felt no hatred. I only felt a profound sense of detachment. He was a small man who only valued power, and he was realizing too late that he had thrown away the real power. "I don't want your lower ranks, Jackson, and I sure as hell don't want to be your Luna," I said, leaning down so he could see the absolute certainty in my eyes. "I, Elena Vance, hereby reject you, Jackson Locke, as my fated mate, and I break whatever tether we have left." A visible, agonizing shockwave ripped through Jackson's frame as the final, lingering phantom threads of our connection shattered into dust. He let out a breathless groan, collapsing forward with his forehead pressed into the dirt, completely broken. I looked up at Killian. He was watching me, his golden eyes burning with a pride so intense it made my heart ache with happiness. He reached out, his large, warm hands sliding into mine, locking our fingers together. "Get him out of my sight," Killian commanded the remaining guards. "Tell his father that if a single bloodhound wolf steps across our border again, we won't just defend our gates, we will march and burn their territory to ash." The surviving invaders dragged a broken, weeping Jackson away into the dark forest, retreating in total disgrace. The courtyard fell silent, save for the crackling of the fires. Slowly, the Nightshade warriors gathered around us, their weapons lowered, their eyes fixed on the two of us. Killian raised our joined hands high into the air. "The bloodhounds came to take what wasn't theirs," Killian's voice boomed across the valley, powerful and triumphant. "But tonight, they learned that the shadows protect their own. Behold your new alpha female, behold your Luna." A deafening, unified roar of approval erupted from the pack. The warriors beat their chests. and the wolves in the valley let out a chorus of beautiful ringing howls that echoed against the moonlit mountains. I looked at the crowd cheering for me, then turned my head to look at Killian. He leaned down, pressing a fierce, sweet kiss to my lips before whispering against my ear, "Welcome home, my queen." And that brings us to the end of Elena and Killian's journey. From a broken, rejected wolf left to die in the freezing woods, to a powerful warrior queen ruling the Nightshade pack, she proved that choice is always more powerful than blind fate. But now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of Jackson's absolute regret at the end? Did he get what he deserved, or should Elena have been even harsher? And how do you feel about Killian as the new alpha in her life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know your favorite scenes. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our upcoming romance audiobooks. Don't forget to share this story with your fellow werewolf romance lovers. Thank you so much for listening tonight, and I'll see you in the next story.